Real-time crime centers have become a cornerstone of modern policing, helping agencies connect information faster, improve coordination, and make smarter decisions when seconds matter most. But building or refreshing a center can be complex. Constant Technologies helps simplify the process. Constant has partnered with law enforcement agencies across the country to plan, design, and build real-time crime centers, communication centers, drone operation rooms, and emergency operations centers, spaces that are purpose-built to support today's public safety missions. From American-built operator consoles to advanced video wall systems, we focus on the physical environment and technology infrastructure that brings your data and teams together. Our experienced design team works closely with your agency to create layouts and plans that support current operations and future growth. The result is a command environment where video communications and collaboration come together, helping your team move from reactive to proactive policing. Learn more at constanttech.com and schedule a complimentary design consultation. To get started, contact my friend, Lieutenant Sean Arthur, retired from the Collier County Sheriff's Office, at 239-469-4901. Welcome to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. I'm John Creamer, Deputy Executive Director of FDSA. Each episode, I sit down with law enforcement thought leaders to tackle critical issues shaping the future of public safety. Together, we'll explore key topics that empower law enforcement professionals to navigate challenges, lead with confidence, and advance their careers. Take a pause, gain valuable insights, and lead your career with purpose. Thanks for listening. Hey, welcome to A Tactical Pause. This is your host, John Creamer, and I am so honored today to have U.S. Representative Jimmy Patronis. And Mr. Patronis, Congressman Patronis, represents the 1st Congressional District of Florida. So this is a big deal for us, for our listeners, and for me personally. So thank you for coming on the show today, sir.
Thanks, John. It's an honor to be with you.
Yeah, so I know it's a busy time of season. Before we started recording, we just talked about you had 2 sitting Florida sheriffs in your office yesterday, Sheriff Simmons and Sheriff Atkinson. So I know personally, Sheriff Atkinson, we were talking about his agenda and how busy he's been. So it's got to be a crazy time of year for you, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, and having folks from home come pay a visit is always a great reality check. This process up here in DC, it's amazing. Good people, love their country. There's a lot of just really good public servants, but it's easy also to get caught up in what's taking place in Washington, D.C. And to me, there's no better person to give you the ground truth of what is taking place back in the district or the concerns of the constituents than your local sheriffs, as they have the neighborhoods canvassed in security to make sure that we continue to take care of our citizens. At the same time, they work 24/7, 365, and the men and women they lead have that role. So they're always got their ear to the ground. And on top of that, they're going to be sensitive to the public's needs because they're going to have their names on the ballot every 4 years too. So, I mean, again, just an amazing way, and so flattered to be able to have the relationships with our sheriffs in CD1 in order to try to best serve our constituents.
Again, it's a personal privilege for me. I mean, I know you probably have a network of tens of thousands of people, but a lot of times on the show, I talk, for me, all roads lead back to Tallahassee, Florida. And again, before you and I started recording, we talked about relationship with Sheriff Tommy Ford and a coworker and a former roommate of yours, Officer Greg Tucker. And then to know a real live U.S. representative from Florida, representing Florida with your background, it's a big deal to me. So I do appreciate your time today. And I mean,
I appreciate it's going to get more awkward than that or nerdy than that. So if you're driving up North Monroe, you remember where Cafe de Lorenzo used to be, or was Kentucky Fried Chicken. Across the street, there's a little nail shop called Arden's, and that's where my daddy was born. So that was a birth home, and so my family goes back. My great grandfather and one of his brothers settled in Quincy, Florida, and then my grandfather came down to Tallahassee, and that's where my daddy was born. And so I got a whole bunch of cousins in Tallahassee. So it's a second home.
Yeah, and my mother's from Quincy.
Yeah,
the world just got tighter. So hey, enough about us. So how did you wind up from Bay County, Florida, to where you are now? And what were some of the stops along the way?
Yes, I grew up in the family restaurant business. I was there for 30 years, and I've always just really just had a passion of taking care of the customer. It's fun taking care of the customer, and making them happy. And it's almost like a game. You're working the tables. You think about how intoxicating the restaurant business is. And people could go anywhere for their birthday, their anniversary, that special occasion, but they picked your place to go to. So, I mean, that's been kind of a how I was hardwired growing up. So I've been very grateful to the public because people make a choice to come and eat supper with you. And, I always loved being able to try to reciprocate and return the favor. And that's really where I got interested in wanting to get into public service. And it was through the Florida legislature. It was a two occupation. You're supposed to be a citizen legislator in Tallahassee. So you keep your real job, and you work as a public servant in the state legislature as a part-time job so you can hear the challenges of your constituents and you can share the challenges of your occupation when it comes to putting the state's budget together. And I think that's what makes Florida a very healthy legislative environment. There's term limits. And you also have a part-time legislature, so you can't stay there forever, and you're going to have another job in order to make a living and take care of your family. And so, did that for 8 years. I was term limited out. A good friend of mine by the name of Rick Scott says, Jimmy, do you want to regulate utilities? So I did that for 3 years on the Public Service Commission with my wife's permission. And then I did that for three. And then Jeff Atwater decided to go take a job in South Florida, get closer to his family. It's a long drive from South Florida to Tallahassee. And then so I got the honor of being CFO for about 9 years. And people really don't realize how amazing the people of the Department of Financial Services are. And I get biased. I feel like we're the most important agency in the state. Um, I got more attorneys on the payroll than the Attorney General does. I've got more inspectors and licensors on the payroll than the ag commissioner does. Those jobs, they can be contracted out, but unless my office writes a paycheck, nobody shows up to work. So I
Right.
think we've got a lot of fun that we do. As I like to poke fun at my old colleagues.
Well, so let's talk about the role of the CFO in Florida. So that changed at one point. That had been part of years ago the governor's cabinet position, right? And then it got blended, and then it became an elected position. Correct?
So we used to have a well, going back into the Jeb Bush administration, I mean, you can take it back even further. We used to have a 7-member cabinet, Secretary of State, Commissioner of Education, Comptroller, Treasurer, Ag Commissioner, Attorney General, Governor. So the cabinet offices had no term limits, but the governor was limited to one term. And the legislature met once every 2 years. So you had a very strong cabinet. You had a weak governor. And so a lot of that in my opinion, got shooken up when Jeb Bush became governor. Jeb used the Constitution Revision Commission once every 20 years and shrunk the cabinet from 7 to 4 and changed up some of the dynamics with it, made the governor's office stronger. And so this is where we took the comptroller's office and the state treasurer's office, which was also the insurance commissioner, and kind of blended them together. So I was the fourth CFO in the state of Florida's history. And again, great job, but most folks still recognize what a state treasurer is. Not everybody knows what a state CFO is. So I think the title sometimes, people get the impression, I work for the governor. But I told him, I said, look, governor doesn't show up to work unless I sign his paycheck. And I said, when you go to the Capitol, one end of the hallway is my office, the other end is his. And that kind of gave us a little bit of validity when
Right.
we're trying to explain where we are in the pecking order.
Right, absolutely. And then again, so that I think that's unique to Florida. There may be some other models out there, but I think it's very unique to Florida. So when you were CFO, what are the things that fell under that? You had fire marshal, you had insurance regulation.
Yeah, so we did all insurance fraud for the state of Florida. We had over 300 sworn law enforcement that worked for us as we focused on insurance fraud and financial crimes. Being the state fire marshal, we also had the arson investigation units for the state. We regulated mining and blasting. We licensed every insurance agent and agency in the state. We licensed bail bondsmen. I mean, it just goes on and on. We were the trustee over all unclaimed property, so we would reunite the public with hundreds of millions of dollars of lost property, cash, loot, you name it, every single year. In addition to writing every paycheck of every single state employee, every retirement check, paying every invoice. I mean, so we pump out a lot of resources. We collect a lot of resources. So we're the state's. I tell people affectionately, we were the state's business manager. You know, and so as all these different dynamics, we did public assistance fraud. So whenever somebody was gaming the system with food stamps or TANF cards or whatnot, we were the ones that did the arresting on that, and we would work with Department of Children's and Families in order to bring all that in for our landing. So it goes on and on. One of the most interesting things, we run the State Fire College, so we train a lot of firefighters, but we do all coordination of urban search and rescue. So, with our role as insurance consumer services, we were the guys that were getting the public informed how to prepare for a storm. Then during the storm, we are then the first one with boots on the ground to help rescue them through urban search and rescue. And then after the storm, we're the ones out there actually helping them put their financial house back in order. So I tell people our office did more during a hurricane than anybody else in helping people get back up on their feet.
Oh, hands down, and even the fraud that happened after the hurricanes, right? With all the roofing and and the insurance fraud that you just talked about. I mean, that could be a full-time job every year. You just catch
Yeah,
that
there's
from the year prior.
and it's a game of whack-a-mole. We would keep on, pushing out new solutions in order to protect the public, and then we finally kind of got some traction when we just started just beating up the airwaves, telling people don't sign anything. I said there's no reason why it's still the case. Your insurance company will pay you for your claim without you signing a single document. There's no reason why for you to sign anything in order to get your claim processed. But unfortunately, there's scoundrels out there, bad actors that will get you to literally sign your claim away, a percentage of your claim, and now dollars that you're entitled to are going to be shared with somebody maybe you've never even met before in your life.
That's right. That's right. How did you transition? I mean, you just described all these roles that happened underneath you. You had to build a tremendous team of people that were subject matter experts and people you could trust. So, just the insurance fraud alone, let alone the firefighting side of it, the regulation, and the law enforcement that you did. How did you go about building a team like that?
Well, I tell people it's not a sprint, it's a march. You got to work on it every day. And part of it was a culture that we established. And it goes back to the restaurant business. In the restaurant business, if you don't take care of the customer, somebody else will. Okay. But it's kind of hard to do that in government. So I would always, in government, I'd say it in front of my team all the time. If you don't take care of the customer, I'm going to find somebody else that will. And my attitude is if you're working for our office, you're going to take phone calls on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, Mondays, holidays, you name it, because at the end of the day, we work for the public and there's not a really set time schedule that you're not off the clock. And if you don't like that type of work schedule, then you're happy to go find a job somewhere else. So we built a team that was wired to respond that way. And a lot of times I tell people some days Jimmy was a state house member. Sometimes Jimmy was a county commissioner. Some days he was a CFO. Some days he's a member of Congress. But at the end of the day, I tell people we work for the government, and the government ultimately the bill is paid for by the people that we represent.
That's
So
right.
wherever their question or concern lies, it's simply because we're the phone number they know in their phone that they can call to get help. And sometimes we would take their concern, even though it may not be our jurisdiction, and we'll deal with it. I just had a call about 10 minutes ago from a young lady who is having difficulty getting her benefits from the state that she's entitled to. Well, I don't necessarily have anybody on speed dial anymore, but what I did is I just picked up the state representative who is going to have the most up to date contacts over at that particular agency where her benefits are housed. And I said, give this young lady a call. She's having troubles with this particular agency, and get one of their legislative directors to jump on it. So it's just what you do.
Serving people.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. It's
Yeah.
fun.
It can be very fun, right? So, how did you wind up in Congress? So, I know that there was an
Yep.
opening. You ran for it. You had to resign to, was it resign to run, right?
Yeah, it's great. So the resign to run laws in Florida are real they're kind of different. So I was in the legislature for 8 years and then public service commission. So argue about 18 years, I was in Florida politics, Florida government. In that time, the resign to run provision had been changed 3 different times. So a lot of times, depending on who the governor was, now I'm being a little bit of a historian, depending who the governor was or the governor potentially could be, the legislature would sometimes do some checks and balances in changing the resign to run provision. So here the scenario is Governor Ron DeSantis was going to make a run for president. Whether he asked or not, I don't think he specifically asked the legislature. The legislature said, well, look, it's in the middle of a gubernatorial cycle. Why don't we give Governor DeSantis the opportunity to stay as governor and continue to run for federal higher office? So the legislature changed that law for him, but it didn't change it for anybody else. Mm-hmm. So in my case, I had to resign 10 days before qualifying if I was going to run for Congress. Matt Gaetz left early to go pursue an opportunity with the administration. And ultimately, my feeling is I don't know if the president wants me or not. Congress sounds like an exciting opportunity, a great way to make some memories with my kids that they've never seen before. But, I love my job working for the state of Florida, but I'm a big believer. God's got a plan. I don't know what that plan is, but sometimes it's going to be presented to you and you just don't need to question it. You just need to follow through. So as we were debating this move, the president calls and says, look, if you'll run for Congress, I'll support you. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to answer that call. And it has been very rewarding. And the one thing I think that's a misnomer, and people ask, well, how is it? I'll tell people all the time, the people in Washington, D.C., the members in Congress, they're great. And here's a crazy thing about it. If you're a member from Congress and you're in Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana, for generations, you and your family have been vacationing in Northwest Florida. So they have this familiarity with this part of the state. So I came up here with all these instant new friends that had been eating at my family's restaurant or had been vacationing in the region. So we just had this instant chemistry because of where they enjoyed spending. When they had leisure time, they spend it in our backyard. So the president asks, you don't say no. Mm-hmm. And here we go. We're on a new journey with our family and supporting the constituents that we love.
And we'll be right back. Every day you put your life on the line to protect and serve. Who's protecting you? United Badges Insurance Services operates as a dedicated resource for the first responder public safety community. Serving thousands of first responders, United Badges offers a wide range of products including commercial insurance, group accident and health insurance, and personal insurance such as auto, home, renters, rental properties, vacation properties, boat, motorcycle, RVs, flood, and umbrella. United Badges serves active and retired public safety personnel, public safety agencies, public safety associations, public safety support businesses, and public safety families and friends. Experience the United Badges difference. Call 800-566-5990 or visit unitedbadges.com to request your free insurance quote today. United Badges Insurance Services is a proud strategic partner of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. Applicants are individually underwritten by each respective insurance carrier and subject to insurance policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states. Promotional material for descriptive purposes only. SaferWatch and law enforcement. SaferWatch is a powerful tool that enhances public safety by improving communication between law enforcement and the community it serves. Through the SaferWatch platform, agencies can send real-time emergency and non-emergency alerts, keeping residents and visitors informed about critical incidents, safety advisories, and community updates. Additionally, SaferWatch allows the public to report crime tips, suspicious activities, and threats, providing law enforcement with valuable intelligence. SaferWatch tips have led to the prevention of school shootings, stopped sexual predators, caught wanted fugitives and burglary suspects, and has even prevented suicides. This easy-to-use two-way communication tool ensures faster response times and helps protect the community proactively. By empowering both citizens and law enforcement, SaferWatch fosters a safer, more connected community. For more information, visit saferwatchapp.com or download the free SaferWatch app on iOS or Android. Now back to the show. It's got to be mind blowing for you and your family, right? Because I mean, you were very involved with law enforcement in Florida. In your last role as a CFO, I saw you many times at every sheriff's
Yeah.
conference. There's been many times when you were up on giving a speech or giving a talk or a welcome, and you would call. It was one of the boys' birthdays, and you'd hold
Yeah.
up your phone and stuff like
It
that.
would get me upset.
Well, how surreal is that? Do you think for them? I mean, and you mentioned God, and you're quoting Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans you declares the Lord. It's got
Yeah.
to be mind boggling, right? That you from Panama City and you're in Washington D.C. and you got a call from the president. That's
Yeah.
I can't compute that. I don't know what it's like for you and your family to do that.
Well, didn't expect it. And, he talked to Katie and
Oh, you're a good American, sir. It's okay.
he, uh,
God's got
he,
his
uh,
hands all over you, Jimmy.
he said, Katie, if you don't want him to do it, I'm not going to endorse him. So you tell me if you don't want him to do it or not.
Yeah,
So I'm a big believer in family decisions. But, the one thing I forgot to share with you that I did not learn until I guess I took it for granted. I did not really learn until getting the job as CFO that you don't have anything good in life if it's not safe. And one thing that I got very involved with once I got to Tallahassee was economic development, job creation, trying to create, breaking government loose out of the way so people can pursue investments to create prosperity. And then you start to realize that people are not going to invest their capital in making an investment in a community, whether it be a good school, a good store, a nice hotel, or a destination attraction, you name it, if it's not safe. And we just can't forget how important our first responders are. And those men and women work 24/7, 365 on birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, special occasions to ensure that anytime somebody dials 911, there is a voice of help that is going to be there that is going to potentially save their life.
that's
And
right.
so, and we don't remind the public of that enough. And I look at the civil unrest that we're seeing all over this nation right now, and it definitely hurts my heart as we've got laws on the books and and the president's truly trying to hit some reset buttons and remind people that there's laws on the books. There are reasons why you get engaged in politics. I tell people all the time, if you don't get involved in the elections process, you get the government that you deserve. And this is what we have got right now as an opportunity to make right, to save generations from the harms and evils that could pursue them. One is just keeping crime off our streets. Right now, under President Trump's leadership, the murder rate is at the lowest it's ever been in our country.
Oh, yeah, on record, the
Yeah,
lowest rate.
yeah,
So what you don't know, sir, is like I'm from Tallahassee. My father was a firefighter here. He retired here in
really.
1996. Most of my family is public safety, public service, and going back to World War II. And it warmed my heart to see. What it's like to see these men and women, the hurricanes bearing down on our state. They're
Yeah.
not at home prepping the house. They're getting their
No,
squad car together, or they're already
no.
deployed, waiting someplace. And you know that, and these firefighters that put their lives on the line, and even our dispatchers. We next week on our show we're doing an after action about the FSU shooting that happened last
Mhm.
year, and
Yeah.
we're bringing in two telecommunicators that answered that call, and it's just what a big deal it is, and to have an advocate like you, not only when you were here at the state level, but at the national level. It's a big deal.
Well, we had Hurricane Ian as it made landfall in Southwest Florida. You had a 911 operator in Sarasota. I think they, in a 48-hour period, they handled like 24,000 calls. And one of the 911 operators was on the phone as a man ended up having a heart attack and dying. And so you think about what type of calls these men and women get, and you think about what type of response is going to be mounted in order to try to save a life. And as people get stubborn and they don't want to evacuate, sometimes it's horrific. And I remind people, these men and women in uniform, they can't, wipe the memories off their mind like you would wipe off a chalkboard. The horrific images that they see take their toll. And you can talk to any firefighter who remembers the first time they collected a lifeless body of a child,
Yeah.
and that day will haunt them and it will stay with them forever. And I remember the first time it really sunk in with me. I was in Palm Beach County. Usually, when I'm in another market, I like to turn on to the local news and try to catch like a 6 a.m. local show. And so there was a little reporter from my hometown who got promoted up into Palm Beach. I go, oh, there's
Mm.
Andrew. So I turn up the volume on the TV, and Andrew's reporting from a retention pond in Palm Beach County where a 3-year-old girl had wandered out into the pond and drowned.
Yeah.
And all I could think about is some poor firefighter wading out of that water,
Yeah.
get some lifeless little girl, and then somebody had to tell her mama and daddy they're never going to hug their child again. And those are tough jobs. And so as I would talk to various first responders and just kind of hugs are therapeutic, and we would get to visiting. And then what would be the great side of it is you would hear all of the positive stories, the amazing stories, the lives that they saved. Um, and another dynamic that I never knew until I got this job, and I don't mean to get kind of, you know, firsthand with you, but I remember Hurricane Irma hits the state of Florida, and the first time I ever went on a call with an engine was with Hillsborough Fire Rescue. So we were down there hours after the storm hit. We were in an engine, and a 911 call comes in. So lights and sirens onto the call. And so as we're pursuing, we park in a in a parking lot of an abandoned gas station. And I go, "What's up, guys? Why do we stop?" He says, "Well, the call is too hot. Hillsborough Sheriff's Office has to get there and cool it off before we can go out there and administer aid." And people don't think about the type of risk our first responders put their lives in every single day, to the point where we're going to go save somebody's life, but we have to make sure that it's a safe place for us to be able to administer that life-saving aid in the first place.
Isn't
And
that crazy?
we take that for granted.
Right.
We don't realize what is happening behind the scenes as we sit on the couch and watch the Super Bowl this Sunday.
That's right.
You know?
And sir, every scar on my body, from the one on my head to the one on my knees, was for a stranger.
Yeah.
For a stranger. So, I'm like I said, I'm moved. I'm so grateful that you have the same heart for all first responders, from telecommunicators to corrections. It's a big deal. It's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Well, you mentioned corrections. I remember the first time I toured Gulf CI and I'm walking out in the rec yard, and there is literally 10,000 eyeballs staring at me. And and you see a couple of corrections officers out there in that sea of troubled
Yeah.
troubled hearts and minds. And you think about what the state does behind the scenes. And again, it's a an agency that doesn't get enough resources. The employees don't get enough salary or payroll, and it's a tough job. But somebody has agreed to want to answer the call in order to keep our state safe at all levels. So, I mean, you know, the job as CFO, it really taught me a lot about how amazing our state is, but more importantly, it taught me how amazing our public servants are.
Amen. Amen. Now, at the national level, what I want to brag on Florida. What do you see about the differences between how we do business in Florida and first responders and law enforcement to what maybe your peers are doing in other areas of the nation?
So, probably the biggest difference that I would compare Florida to the rest of the nation that I've picked up on is our emergency response. Because we're in a state that is so disaster prone, our expertise of the men and women, our county emergency managers in most cases are more competent and capable than a state emergency manager is. And it's just because of the battle rhythm that they see. They are going to see more complex challenges on a routine basis. Last year was a great year. No storms hit the state of Florida. I think it's the first time in 20 years.
Yeah.
So it was great to be able to have that for any of a number of reasons. One is just what it did to help lower insurance rates. And it's kind of crazy how all those tie together. But Florida's a unique beast because we are disaster prone. We have a different insurance climate. We do have a market that has millions of visitors, every 100 million visitors will visit the state of Florida vacation who aren't familiar with our roads, our laws, our norms, our customs, our cultures. So, I mean, there's just so many things that we do on a day-to-day basis that other states just don't.
Right.
And you know, and the other states have great people in them. Don't get me wrong, but you know, Florida is just a economic beast. I mean, we produce business, we produce jobs, we produce revenues, we pay well, but most importantly, we do it by keeping our customers and our citizens and those that pay us a visit safe.
Absolutely. Well, Congressman, what would you say from your perspective are like the biggest challenges facing not just Florida law enforcement or first responders, but nationally? So you talked about the stuff in other states, in Minnesota right now, but what challenges do you see might be affecting law enforcement as a whole as we move forward in this strange climate that we're living in? No
Well,
pun
you know,
intended.
and I'm going to pivot to a subject that you probably wouldn't expect me to talk about, but I'm going to talk about social media right now.
Okay.
You know, we're advocating for a repeal of what's called Section 230. It's called the Protect Act. And President Trump wanted to do this as a first administration. So we have had social media perverted in ways where it is educating people, it is having calls to action to ask for violence, for organizing protests in ways that are not civil protests, but ultimately that end up turning into violent protests. And our social media companies have no liability in this space. I can't go to a local television station and advocate for meet me doing a commercial saying, go meet me at this particular building on this time of day and bring bricks because we're going to throw them at this building. They can't run that ad. Okay. But you can do it on social media and there's no recourse.
Right.
So, you know, I feel like our social media companies are coloring way outside the lines. And that's not just with our law enforcement, but with our children. I mean, our law enforcement that they have to face, but also they are manipulating adults, manipulating our children, and they're programming our children. So some of the concerns I've got is you go to some of these blue states, getting back to your original difference between Florida and other states, and some of these blue states where the sanctuary city is an acceptable norm. Unfortunately, you have unrest. I was talking to the member of Congress from Minneapolis the other day, and there's 10 cities around Minneapolis that aren't Fry's city of Minneapolis, but 10 cities that want to cooperate with ICE. They want safer cities. So some of the cities around Minneapolis, they want the civil unrest to stop. But you know, this is all being, in my opinion, being leveraged through social media, the shock and awe, you know, and it's unfortunate that there's been loss of life in Minneapolis with what happened with those protesters. But these people were spun up, they were poisoned, they were, you know, brought into an emotionally charged situation where law enforcement unfortunately was not respected and loss of life was the ultimate result.
Right, right. I'm going to date myself for a second. I'm a little bit older than you. And back in the day, when MTV was MTV, I wasted a
Yeah,
whole summer, watching videos and stuff like that. They
yeah.
started coming out with TV shows with programming. And one of the first documentaries I remember was called The Merchants of Cool.
Okay.
And what they did was they were talking about MTV, how it started to impact the generation at that time, and anything that was washed through MTV at the time became cool. So then
Yeah.
that's what's going on with social media. Wouldn't you say is that you have these anonymous people that are now influencing all of us? I mean, the people that read this and are influenced by it. Would you say that?
Yeah, I totally agree. Um, and I do believe that you do have an environment. So let's take TikTok, for example. We get some briefings, and TikTok is the absolute most powerful espionage tool in the world right now. Uh, as you know, Congress has passed legislation to get rid of TikTok or make it banned in the United States. You know, the president also knows the value of TikTok, so we've got to have U.S. investments controlling it. So, you know, you've got something that's that powerful. So the president's idea is, all right, we want checks and balances. Let's put some Americans in charge of it. So that's end up where we're at right now. I still don't keep it on my phone. I won't let my children have it on theirs. But here's the reality with TikTok. If you've got it, whatever you do, do not allow it onto your local home Wi-Fi network. It will connect with all your devices. If you want the rest of the world to know everything that's going on in your household, just go and open up an app of TikTok in your home environment and put it on Wi-Fi. One of the worst, most dangerous things you could do to your personal privacy and your information.
I was not aware of that, of the depth of that. So that's terrifying. I was
I
not aware
learned
of
that
that.
up here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I learned that up here.
Along the same lines, Congressman, a lot is going on in Florida with AI and with other forms of cybercrime. And going back to the Constitutional Revision Committee, Amendment 10 brought Miami-Dade and Volusia County on as constitutional sheriffs. And we have worked a lot with
Yep.
Sheriff Rosie down in Miami-Dade, and they have a fantastic cyber unit. And one of the things they've really looked at was AI. And so there's been new legislation, at least in Florida. I'm not sure if it's at the national level, but um, somebody could go to a public park, to the beach, video children playing, and they could go home and they could take those images and using AI create child pornography. And it was that
Sure.
easy. And now there's been legislation in place. But going back to what we talked about earlier, I think Florida leads the charge in that because of just the influx of people that pass through our state. And then I think the professionals that are in the business that see these trends and try to get ahead of it. Do you see anything like that at the national level? Is there any
Oh yeah.
legislation? Yeah.
Yeah. Look, the section two, look, I can go pick a fight with Apple or Google because they have 100% market share of the devices. You know, you can go pick a fight with the social media companies, but there's like whack-a-mole with those guys. So, but they all stand behind what's called Section 230. So this is why we have picked that lane to play in. Section 230 was created in 1996 as a liability protection, so internet service providers could grow their access into markets without liability of being sued. So they can make investments and have a chance of making their investments profitable. So I do see where we have got to be proactive. But look, the social media companies are incredibly influential. There's not a single member of Congress that doesn't use these accounts to connect with their constituents, and it's a powerful medium. So then the frustration, well, you're violating freedom of speech. And no, you ain't violating freedom of speech. But what you are going to do is if you put something stupid on there, you're going to be held accountable. You can't go say fire in a packed movie theater.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So, yeah, what's the difference? One is saying it in a movie theater, and one's doing it virtually or on the internet. So
That's
you're
right.
right. There has to
That's
be
right.
some type of regulation to some degree. I know regulation is a harsh word these days, but we have to be responsible.
Well, and I'm not a big government person, but at the end of the day, our children, as we're starting to see more and more of regret over a young mind's development, and it is being pressured by social media, whether it be gender affirmation care, you name it. You have got kids that need to be kids and they need to develop normally. They don't need to have the outside pressures of social media or peer pressure of torment or bullying that takes place. Look, bullying is a natural thing when you're a kid. I remember getting bullied when I was a kid, and it is what it is. But social media has created, exponentially because of the importance of these young minds wanting to make sure they have acceptance in society or acceptance amongst their peers. And sometimes if we don't, push back on the social media providers, I don't know how we stop how far this stuff could go.
Right. Well, Congressman, we briefly touched on decades of your career. We've briefly touched on things that are impacting all Americans and Floridians. I am so grateful for your time. Your staff has been wonderful to work with. I know you're busy, and I'm grateful. We'd love to have you come back at another time if your calendar allows for it. It's
Yep.
just been a tremendous honor. In closing, is there anything you'd like to say to? I mean, our podcast is called A Tactical Pause, and it's for Florida law enforcement, but we have a much bigger draw to that. I mean, is there anything you'd like to close out with for first responders in Florida?
Yeah, just reminding people when you come up to Washington, D.C., which it is worth making the trip. It's an amazing place. You have got a city to be proud of, okay? And there's good people out there. Just know that what makes it on the mainstream media and the news, they show the most toxic elements of it. They show the shock and awe. They have got to make your eyes glued to the TV. And I didn't realize until I got this job how much Washington tends to dictate a lot of global policy. It is real. We are a major player when it comes to setting, terms around the globe. But we're still an amazing city, the most, powerful, republic that's ever been established. And you should come up and bring your family and just understand how fortunate we are to have the country that we've got. And yeah, we're not perfect. We have got to be constantly reminded about the right policies for the right reasons for the people that we represent. So I just encourage you, if you haven't, thought about coming to DC, I talk to people every day that have never been here. And I had, like I said, a crew last night from the district, and we took a nighttime tour of the Capitol. And you don't realize how special this place is until you come up and pay it a visit. And I'd love to be your tour guide. So come up and let our office know, and we'll have the coffee on.
That's amazing. Thank you, sir. Thank you for listening to The Tactical Pause, the official podcast of the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association. FDSA proudly serves over 25,000 deputy sheriffs across the state with legal benefits, vital training, and financial assistance in times of need. You can listen to previous episodes at fldeputysheriffs.org or wherever you get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and encourage your friends, coworkers, and those in the law enforcement community to listen as well. To learn more about the Florida Deputy Sheriff's Association and how we serve those who serve, visit our website at fldeputysheriffs.org.